we have something called as Elgamal Technique. So what is this technique basically used to? It will also work with public key. Whenever it wants, it will also generate a private key also. So we'll also take a look at an algorithmic public key cipher system for a number of reasons. Why I want to use this technique? I had RSA algorithm, I had DH algorithm, DH key exchange technique. Why should I use Elgamal technique? So we'll see, to show that RSA is not the only public key system. So RSA, we worked with respect to public key only. So another part with respect to RSA is using Elgamal technique to exhibit a public key system based on a different one-way function. One-way function is just sending data or receiving data, not both the terms. You cannot do both at a time. So to exhibit, there is another system with respect to Elgamal technique where I can work with only one-way functions. It is the basis for several well-known cryptographic primitives. Do you remember? This acts as the base for all the different cryptographic algorithms. Okay, as simple about this. How this is actually similar to with respect to your DH technique only. So all the terms you know, GP and all, you studied in DH technique also. What does it do? So how does this algorithm works? Is first I should assume a value for P, which is actually a large prime number. With respect to which you will be performing modulus. So you should assume some P value, which is large. Select a special number G. The number G must be a primitive element modulo P. So you are assuming some another value for G also. Now I should choose a private key called as X. Okay, basically all is assumption in Elgamal technique. All the three numbers you assume P, Q, P, G as well as X. Why I am choosing X is this can be any number bigger than 1 and smaller than P minus 1. For choosing P and G, there was no limitation in Elgamal technique. For choosing the value of X, there is a limitation. This can be any number bigger than 1. It should not be 0. It should be greater than 1 and smaller than P minus 1, whatever you have to do. This is the condition you need to remember. Now you know X. Compute public key Y from X, P and Q. You know three values. I can calculate any other value with respect to these three values. Now, how to calculate that? They have specified a formula. Elgamal has given a formula. Y is equals to G power X mod P. G is nothing but the special number you have assumed here. X is nothing but a private key you have assumed based on the condition bigger than 1 as well as smaller than P minus 1, and then mod P is the special number. So once I get, I'll calculate the public key. Based on the assumptions, you will get some public key. So that was about Elgamal technique, where you are just calculating a public key. Then one example with respect to that, simple example, I have taken P as 23, G as 11. I'm choosing X as 6. It should be greater than 1. It is greater than 1 and lesser than P minus 1. P minus 1 is 22. It is lesser than 22. So I'll put on all the values here. So finally, the public key, whatever you have generated, is 9, and the private key is equal to X. Whatever you select here, it is 6. Now I have got both public as well as private key. Can I say this algorithm is very simple so that I'll get both the keys at a time? So based on the assumptions, you will get this. So that was simple about your Elgamal encryption technique. So how Elgamal encryption basically works is, the first job is to represent, you can remember only this. This is more than enough. So how the technique works, based on assumption values of G, P and X. But you should remember X value should be bigger than 1 as well as smaller than P minus 1. With help of this formula, you'll be calculating your private key. Okay. So this technique with respect to Elgamal encryption, if I'm working with Elgamal encryption, so what and all I should consider? The first job is to represent the plain text as a series of numbers modulo P. Then that we did in the previous part. Now, after that, what I can do if I want to encrypt the part. So till here, I generated the keys, private as well as public keys. Now, what next? I should perform encryption. So how encryption can be done? First, generate a random number K. any number which you want, you'll generate k, compute two values, C1 as well as C2, where you can see the formula for C1 is this and C2 is this. So we'll see what are those. Send ciphertext C, that is C is a ciphertext which consists of two separate values, C1 as well as C2. So this is the encryption part you can do, where you are performing two values of C1 and C2, which are nothing but your ciphertext. Okay. Then similarly, the simple example I have taken to generate the ciphertext, generate a random number k as 3. To encrypt m is equals to 10 using public key 9. This data will be given. You can see in the formula there is one term called as m. M will be provided to you. So with respect to that, you should calculate. You will generate one random number called as k, which is nothing but 3. I'll compute both the values of C1 and C2, put up all in the formulas, and I will calculate. Then ciphertext will be 20 as well as 22. Okay, now I have got private key, public key, as well as your ciphertext. So that was a simple example of your Elgamal encryption technique. Okay, and now I did that with the help of this formula also. So I can do that with respect to sender as well as receiver in this formulas, or with respect to these formulas also. So I have taken that also. You can see to decrypt. Now till here was your encryption part. Do remember in Elgamal technique, what are the three different tasks? One is generation of your private key as well as public key. Next is generation of your what? Ciphertext. After ciphertext, you got the ciphertext. You want to decrypt the data, and encryption is done. For decryption, you will do this part with the help of this two functions, that is C2 and M. You will be calculating it with respect to M. So I'll take an example and explain. Compute 20 to the power of 6, so and so. Finally, the plain text, whatever you have passed, should be similar here. So decryption part, to decrypt the ciphertext 20 and 22. To remember C1 and C2. So I got this with respect to this formula. The receiver begins by using their private key X to transform C1 into something more meaningful. So that is, I can say C1 to the power of X can be given by, you already know all these values, so that you can compute the first part, that is y to the power of mod p. Why do I do this? To compute this, it is very useful quantity, because if you divide C2 by something, you should get m. In other words, this formula can be given. If I divide C2 by anything, I should get the value of m. What was the assumption of m? Assumption was m was 10. Now I should get the value as 10. So I am assuming that you can see here, this is the representation of the formula. I am just putting up this here. If I divide something with respect to C2, I should get the plain text finally as 10. So your plain text which you have passed, which you have assumed m as 10, as well as the plain text should be 1 and be equal. So decryption example will be for the another part, but you should remember till encryption your part should be correct. Once the data is encrypted, it is very easy to calculate decryption part also. So that was simple about your Elgamal decryption techniques. Now, for every algorithms, we speak about security. Similarly, we have some security for your Elgamal technique also. So, recall the two different strategies for trying to break RSA. So, the same security applies here. Trying to decrypt a ciphertext without knowledge of private key. We have seen the security the same part in the RSA also. So same applies here. I'm trying, what is the security I can provide that? Trying to decrypt the ciphertext what you have created without having the knowledge of the private key, trying to determine the private key. So these are some of the securities or the problems which I face with respect to the security of Elgamal. So this might be the question which might be framed for this part. What hard problems do you come across if you try to follow these two different strategies to break Elgamal?